What the Koran really says, language, text and commentary, edited with translations by Ibn Warraq. And there's some information below. Islam has worldwide influence, and even in the United States is experiencing a period of unprecedented growth. Its sacred book, the Koran, is the subject of voluminous commentary, yet it rarely receives the kind of objective critical scrutiny that has been applied to the text of the Bible for over a century. To correct this neglect of objective scholarship, Ibn Warraq has assembled this excellent collection of critical commentaries on the Quran, published by noted scholars from the beginning of the 20th century to recent times. These important studies, as well as his own lengthy introduction, show that little about the text of the Quran can be taken at face value. Among the fascinating topics discussed is evidence that the early Muslims did not understand Muhammad's original revelation. Probably more the Mohammedans, right? That the 9th century explosion of literary activity was designed to organize and make sense of an often incoherent text, and that much of the traditions surrounding Muhammad's life were fabricated long after his death in an attempt to give meaning to the Quran. There's another man, I think it's Dr. J. Smith, somebody like that, who says similar things. And he says, okay, what he did was, or his mentor did, was went back to the 7th century, Muhammad's time, okay, era, not these latter translations of what he supposedly said, which he claimed were incorrect. Wrong century, apparently. Also of interest are suggestions that Coptic and other Christian sources heavily influence much of the text, and that some passages reflect even an Essenian background, or from the Essenes, reaching back to the community of the Dead Sea Scrolls. This outstanding volume will be a welcome resource to interested lay readers and scholars alike, and it's according to the publisher. And this is what it includes: the biographical references and indexes and so forth. By various renowned scholars. Okay, that we've just read is from the inside jacket of this particular book, and there's more of it at the back, which you've probably read out. Contents page. Continued, and then followed up or ended by appendices. Preface and acknowledgements. Transliteration and other technical matters. There is no universally accepted system of transliteration or transcription of the Semitic scripts. The authors in this anthology used two different systems for the Arabic alphabet. As some editors in whose journals the articles first appeared insisted that these authors, etc., not change one single letter as a precondition for allowing them to reproduce them. The author was unable to standardize all the articles and adopt just one system. However, the two systems are not that difficult to come to grips with. For Arabic, they are, and he gives examples. Journal Studia Islamica uses and recommends the system 1 above. On the whole, he has used this system in his own introduction and translations. The Journal Arabica, on the other hand, uses system 2. Thus, the articles from this journal included in this anthology follow suit. Readers are also likely to encounter, though not often in this anthology, the following variations: DJ for J and K for Q, for example, in E12. or E12. For the Hebrew and Syriac, he uses the following. All, let's give an example here. All long vowels are overlined. The small raised C or an E. E stands for a hurried or neutral vowel. Underlined letters as in bet are pronounced as fricatives. Thus T, what looks of it, equals English th as in thin. P equals f as in fiel, whatever that word is. Fiel, P-H-I-A-L. Right up to the 1930s, Western scholars used the edition of the Koran by Gustav Flügel, sometimes spelled Flugel, Korani Textus Arabicus 1834, whose numbering of verses differs from what has now become the official or standard Egyptian edition, first published in 1928. Again, not only was it obviously much easier for the author to leave the original Flügel numbering in the pre-1928 articles included in this anthology, but in the case of Richard Bell it was even essential not to interfere with the original numbering, since his entire 2-volume commentary, his introduction to the Koran, and his translation of the Koran only referred to Flügel's edition. So you have changed this in the extracts from the commentary and the introduction to the Koran included here to the standard Egyptian edition would have impaired the concordance of Bell's commentary and introduction to the Koran with his translation. Bell also refers to Fisher and Bath, both of whom are included in this anthology. Again, all his references would have been out of synchronization had the author changed them to the standard Egyptian edition. Finally, as one scholar reminded him, attempting to change the numbering would only have increased the possibility of further errors. Thus, to help readers, he has included a table of differences, Appendix B, which should ease their passage from one system of numbering to the other. In his introduction, however, he has used the official Egyptian system, even where he quotes from Bell. And here is his transcription, transliteration, and consonants, vowels, diphthongs, etc. Part 1. Introduction. Introduction by Ibn Warraq. 1. Quran translated into Arabic. Muslims in general have a tendency to disarm any criticisms of Islam, and in particular the Quran, by asking if the critic has read the Quran in the original Arabic, as though all the difficulties of their sacred text will somehow disappear once the reader has mastered the holy language and has direct experience, oral and visual, of the very words of God, to which no translation can do justice. We've heard that people have to learn the Arabic first to fully understand the Quran. So they might be like, say, a Libyan Muslim, etc., African Muslim, and they have to learn the Arabic first before they fully understand it, to read it and understand it. In a letter to Madame du Deffand, who wished to compare Virgil to Alexander Pope, Voltaire wrote, it's got French there, translated into English, "You know him through translations, but poets are not translatable. Can one translate music?" May 1954. As John Hollander remarks, Voltaire's opinion seems to prefigure the views of a later century, in associating with music not the beauty or decoration, but a strange sort of ineffable, incomprehensible, and hence untranslatable core of pure poetry. This, the author thinks, captures the Muslims' almost mystical and rather irrational attitude to the untranslatability of the Quran very well. Jackson Matthews also singles out another feature that is the most difficult to translate. Rhythm is the one feature of a foreign language that we can probably never learn to hear purely. Rhythm and the meaning of rhythm lie too deep in us. They are absorbed into the habits of the body and the uses of the voice, along with all our earliest apprehensions of ourselves and the world. Rhythm forms a sensibility, becomes part of becomes part of the personality, and one's sense of rhythm is shaped once and for all on one's native tongue. Thus, we can grant that in any translation, whatever the language concerned, there will be inevitable loss of melody and evocative power. However, matters are, as we shall see, even more complicated when it comes to Arabic. First, of course, the majority of Muslims are not Arabs or Arabic-speaking peoples. As we stated, they had to learn the Arabic to be able to read and understand the Quran. The non-Arabic speaking nations of Indonesia, with a population of 197 million, Pakistan with 133 million, Iran with 62 million, Turkey with 62 million, and India with a Muslim population of about 95 million, outnumber by far the total number of native Arabic speakers in about 30 countries in the world. Estimated as 150 million. Many educated Muslims whose native tongue is not Arabic do learn it in order to read the Quran, but then again the vast majority do not understand Arabic because they're not native speakers, right? Even though many do learn parts of the Quran by heart without understanding a word, so they're reciting it, not really knowing what it means in the Arabic. In other words, the majority of Muslims have to read the Quran in translation in order to understand it. Contrary to what one might think, there have been translations of the Quran into, for instance, Persian since the 10th or 11th century, and there are translations into Turkish and Urdu. The Quran has now been translated into over 100 languages, many of them by Muslims themselves, despite some sort of disapproval from the religious authorities, or the Islamic religious authorities, right? The imams, etc., etc. Even for contemporary Arabic-speaking peoples, reading the Quran is far from being a straightforward matter. The Quran is putatively, as we shall see, it is very difficult to decide exactly what the language of the Quran is, written in what we call classical Arabic or CA, but modern Arab populations, leaving aside the problem of illiteracy in Arab countries, do not speak, read or write, let alone think, in CA or classical Arabic. We are confronted with the phenomenon of diglossia, that is to say, a situation where two varieties of the same language live side by side. The two variations are high and low. High Arabic is sometimes called modern literary Arabic or modern standard Arabic. Is learned through formal education in school like Latin or Sanskrit, and would be used in sermons, university lectures, news broadcasts, and for mass media purposes. Low Arabic or colloquial Arabic is a dialect native speakers acquire as a mother tongue, and is used at home, conversing with family and friends, and also in radio or television soap operas. But as Kay points out, the differences between many colloquials and the classical language are so great that a Falah who had never been to school could hardly understand more than a few scattered words and expressions in it without great difficulty. One could assemble dozens of so-called Arabs, Falahin, in a room who have never been exposed to the classical language, so that not one could properly understand the other. In the introduction to his grammar of Quranic and classical Arabic, Wheeler M. Thaxton writes, the Quran established an unchanging norm for the Arabic language. There are, of course, certain lexical and syntactic features of Quranic Arabic that became obsolete in time and standardization of the language at the hands of the philologians of the 8th and 9th centuries emphasized certain extra Quranic features of the Arabic people, koina, while downplaying other Quranic usages, yet by and large not only the grammar but even the vocabulary of a modern newspaper article display only slight variation from the established norm of classical Quranic Arabic. Though he does allow for some change and decay, Thaxton, it seems to the author, paints a totally misleading picture of the actual linguistic situation in modern Arabic speaking societies. He implies that anyone able to read a modern Arabic newspaper should have no difficulties with the Quran or any classical Arabic text. Thaxton seems totally insensitive to the evolution of the language. to changes in the usage and meaning of terms over the very long period and the very broad area in which classical Arabic has been used. Anyone who has lived in the Middle East in recent years will know that the language of the press is at best semi-literary, and certainly simplified as far as structure and vocabulary are concerned. We can discern what would be called grammatical errors from a classical Arabic point of view in daily newspapers or on television news. This semi-literary language is highly artificial, and certainly no one thinks in it. For an average middle-class Arab, it would take considerable effort to construct even the simplest sentence, let alone talk in classical Arabic. The linguist Pierre Larcher has written of the considerable gap between medieval classical Arabic and modern classical Arabic, or what the author has been calling modern literary Arabic. Certain texts written in the former are today the object of explanatory text in the latter. He then adds in a footnote that he has in his library, based on this model, an edition of the Risalah of Shafi died 204 /820. Must be something like 204, but it's actually the date is maybe in the Arabic or something like that, is the year 820. That appeared in a collection with the significant title Getting Closer to the Patrimony. As Kay puts it, in support of the hypothesis that modern standard Arabic is ill-defined as a so-called mixed language or inter-Arabic being used in the speeches of, say, President Bourguiba of Tunisia, noting that very few native speakers of Arabic from any Arab country can really ever master the intricacies of classical Arabic grammar in such a way as to extemporaneously give a formal speech in it. Pierre Larcher has pointed out that wherever you have a linguistic situation where two varieties of the same language coexist, you are also likely to get all sorts of linguistic mixtures, leading some linguists to talk of triglossia. Gustave Michelis even talks of quadriglossia between literary Arabic and vernacular Arabic. He distinguishes a substandard Arabic and educated spoken Arabic. Still others speak of pluri or multi or polyglossia, viewed as a continuum. The style of the Koran is difficult, totally unlike the prose of today, and the Koran would be largely incomprehensible without glossaries. Indeed, entire commentaries. In conclusion, even the most educated of Arabs will need some sort of translation if he or she wishes to make sense of that most gnomic, elusive and elusive of holy scriptures, the Quran. The classification and nature of Arabic is according to Barbara F. Grimes of the Summit Institute of Linguistics. There are 6,703 living languages in the world. These living languages and the dozens of extinct languages whose structure are known and have been studied are classified either typologically, that is, in terms of their structural properties, for example, according to the number and kinds of vowels they use, or according to the order of the subject, verb and object in a simple sentence, or genetically, that is, on the basis of common origin. Genetically related languages have developed or evolved from common parent language. As scholar I.M. Diakonoff put it, the only real criterion for classifying certain languages together as a family is the common origin of their most ancient vocabulary, as well as of the word elements used to express grammatical relations. A common source language is revealed by a comparison of words from supposedly related languages, expressing notions common to all human cultures, and therefore not as a rule likely to have been borrowed from a group speaking another language, and also by a comparison of the inflectional forms for tense, voice, case, or whatever. It goes on about Afro-Asiatic, Semitic, Aramaic, Syriac, Syriac and Arabic. All the world's languages are classified into large groups or phyla, P-H-Y-L-A, phyla, sometimes very loosely called families. Merit Rulin classifies all languages into 20 independent groups, each group containing genetically related languages. Arabic belongs to the group or family now called Afro-Asiatic, though formerly it was called Hamito-Semitic, Semito-Hamitic, or even Erythraean. This family of genetically related languages can be subdivided into 6 primary branches, all descendants of the original parent language, namely 1. Ancient Egyptian, from which Coptic, the liturgical language of the monophysite Christians of Egypt, is descended. 2. Berber, widespread in Morocco and Algeria. 3. Chadic. 4. Omotic. 5. Cushitic. And 6. Semitic. Arabic, like Hebrew, Syriac and Aramaic, is a Semitic language. Semitic languages are further subdivided, sometimes into 4 groups and sometimes into 2. And the author chose Robert Hetzron and Merit Rulin's classification, see Language Tree Appendix D&E, which divides Semitic languages into 2 groups. As one can see, Arabic belongs to the Central Semitic group, which is further subdivided into 2 subgroups, Aramaic and Arabo-Canaanite, sometimes rather confusedly called South Central Semitic. The author has avoided this term to underline that Arabic does not belong to the same subgroup as South Semitic, containing epigraphic South Arabian, modern South Arabian and Ethiopian or Ethiopic. One of the distinctive features of all Semitic languages is the triliteral or triconsonantal root, composed of 3 consonants separated by vowels. The basic meaning of a word is expressed by the consonants as well as different shades of this basic meaning. Are indicated by vowel changes as well as prefixes and suffixes. It's usually like, say for example, you have the word Arabic, you have an N prefix, the IC on the end, or the IA. And if there's something before that, maybe something like Neo-Aramaic or something like that. I'm not saying that's exactly it, that's just the idea I've got. Yeah, so there's something before and there's something after. And that gives you the, say the ear is from the Greek, right? Is like, okay, Arabia, that's a geographical location possessed by certain people. Okay? And then you have the Ik, which is that particular language that they spoke, these people who own or possessed a certain geographical location. One of the distinctive features of all Semitic languages is the trilateral or triconsonantal or consonantal triconsonantal root, composed of 3 consonants separated by vowels. The basic meaning of a word is expressed by the consonants as well as different shades of this basic meaning are indicated by vowel changes as well as prefixes and suffixes. For example, the root KTB refers to writing, and the vowel pattern -a-i implies one who does something. Thus, Katib means one who writes, Kitab means book, Maktub, letter, and Kataba, he wrote. The 2 genders, masculine and feminine, are found in Semitic languages, the feminine often indicated by the suffixes -t or -at or at. The Semitic verb is distinguished by its ability to form from the same root, and it goes on about that. Aramaic is the name of a group of related dialects once spoken by various Aramaeans. Tribes. You look at the Bible, the forefather Aram of these people spoke a certain language. So it became Aramaic. Because Greeks may have turned up there at some point and said, okay, what's that language you're speaking? Oh, it's the language of our forefather. Oh, who is that? Aram. Oh, okay. So what we do is we add this N prefix, okay, because that language belongs to you. You possess that. You're the possessor of that language. So we'll call it Aramaic or Aramaic. Aramaic is the name of a group of related dialects once spoken by various Aramaean tribes for centuries in what is Syria today. There is evidence for it since the beginning of the first millennium BCE, as Aramaeans moved into Assyria and Babylonia. Their language spread to all of the Near East, replacing Akkadian, Hebrew, and other languages, eventually becoming the official language of the Persian Empire. In this period it is spoken of as Imperial Aramaic. Aramaic was itself replaced by Arabic after the rise of Islam in the 7th century. It's like lingua franca. It was a Trinity language at the time, but then it died out, and then Arabic became that lingua franca, or the franca, or the Trinity language of the day. So supposedly Muhammad thought, well, it'd be a shame to lose that, the book of the people, or this sort of stuff. So let's translate what they have said into the Arabic, into his language. Large parts of the biblical books of Ezra 4:8 to 6:18, Ezra 7:12 to 26, and Dan 2:4b to 7:28, and smaller parts of Genesis 31. It's Genesis 3:1. Look at that. Genesis 31:47 and Jeremiah 10:11 are in Aramaic. Jesus' native tongue was Palestinian Aramaic, or Galilean Aramaic. Some words of Jesus in the New Testament, example Talitha Kum in Matthew 5:41, are Aramaic. On the cross, Jesus is said to have quoted Psalms 22:1 in Aramaic, not the Greek, not the Hebrew, and not this other Indian language that many claim. The Babylonian Talmud was written in Eastern Aramaic, a language close to Syriac, or was it called Tamil? Right. The Babylonian Talmud was written in Eastern Aramaic, a language close to Syriac, the language of the Christian city of Edessa, until the 13th century CE, because that's when the Apostolic Church of the East was overrun and destroyed. Right? Okay, so up until then they were speaking Aramaic. Still the liturgical language of the Nestorian, that's what the Apostolic Church of the East is falsely or erroneously called, and over the centuries it sort of stuck, so they basically stuck with that name. Okay, but they say Nestorius was not the founder of the Apostolic Church of the East. And Jacobite Christian churches. Edessa was an important centre of early Christianity in Mesopotamia. Well, at that time you wouldn't have called it Christianity. Okay, yeah, it wasn't until Paul said, he went to Bartholomew, who he was supposed to have met, and his converts there, wherever he went, and she said, okay, we'll call them Christians. But the Roman Imperial Church, etc., the people that come under that certain church, imperial state church leader, and that church, pagan mixed Christian pagan mixed religion, were referred to as Christianity. That's Christianity. Because the Romans borrowed a word from the Greeks, Christus, etc., and then labelled these believers of the Christ, etc., as Christians or followers of the Christus. Peter, etc., who are kosher Jews, said, no, we are not going to be accepting that, because it's pagan. You are pagans. We're not getting it from pagans. We're not taking that title. We are Mashiachai, followers of the Messiah. Yeah, very kosher Jews. Okay. Edessa was an important centre of early Christianity in Mesopotamia. These early Christians gave the Greek name Syriac to the Aramaic dialect they spoke when the term Aramaic acquired the meaning of pagan or heathen. Edessene Syriac rapidly became the literary language of all non-Greek Eastern Christianity, and was instrumental in the Christianization of large parts of Central and South Central Asia. Despite the 5th century schism between the monophysite Jacobite Church in Syria and the Nestorian Church of the East, Syriac remained the liturgical and theological language of both these national churches. Syriac is still the classical tongue of the Nestorians and Chaldeans of Iran and Iraq, and the liturgical language of the Jacobites of eastern Anatolia and the Maronites of Greater Syria. Missionary activity spread the Syriac language and script to India and Mongolia, and rather surprisingly, even the Mongolian script, though written vertically, is derived from the Syriac script. That's when Thomas Exeter went and spread the good news to those peoples, or the Apostolic Church of these was under these particular caliphs, Mohammedan or Islamic rulers, and came across people like Genghis Khan, the Mongols, and so forth. The importance of Syriac literature for our understanding of the rise of Islam was discussed by A. Mingana, J.B. Segal, Sebastian Brock, and Claude Cahen, and of course by Patricia Crone and Michael Cook. But Syriac also played an important role as an intermediary through which Greek learning and thought passed into the emerging Islamic civilizations. So they're like the middlemen, between these two. So that's possibly how the Greeks came across it and learned about it and all that sort of stuff and passed it on. Since it was Syriac-speaking scholars who first translated late Hellenistic science and philosophy from Syriac into Arabic at the Dar al-Hikmah in Baghdad, other scholars such as Mingana, Margoliev, and now Luxembourg want to argue that Syriac greatly influenced not only the vocabulary of the Koran, but its theological and philosophical ideas. How this happened is not yet clearly understood. The oldest Syriac script, which dates back to the 1st century CE, evolved from the Aramaic alphabet, which is also the ancestor of Arabic writing. So, and the author says perhaps that he should have added here that in Hebrew, or he should add there or here in Hebrew, Arabic, and Syriac writing, vowels were at first omitted, so they were left out. There was none. To indicate the vowels probably date from only the 8th century of the Christian era. That's probably when they were introduced and inserted, etc. 4. Arabic. The Arabic language, like any other language, and we must not forget that Arabic is like any other language, especially those in the Semitic group of the Afro-Asiatic family, has a history. It did not appear fully fledged out of nowhere, but slowly evolved, as languages do, over a period of time. Little is known about Old or Proto-Arabic. Early Arabic is the name given to the period from the 3rd to 6th century CE, when over a large part of Arabia, dialects quite distinct from Old Arabic, but approaching Classical Arabic were spoken, and during which Classical Arabic itself must have evolved. Hundreds of Aramaic loanwords entered the language during this period through Jewish and Christian contexts. So that's probably why many say that the Arabic writing, the text, is very close to the Syriac, or of the Syriac. The earliest Arabic texts seem to have been Christian inscriptions, suggesting that the Arabic script was invented by Christian missionaries, probably at Hira or Anbar. Perhaps they created it. That's what they're trying to say there. It is probable that at least partial Bible translations into Arabic existed before Islam. Stylistic reminiscences of the Old and New Testaments are found in the Koran. A Baumstock claimed a pre-Islamic date for the text of some Arabic Bible manuscripts. There is also a fragment of the Psalms in Arabic and Greek characters. Examination of this and two of Baumstock's texts shows a language slightly deviating from Classical Arabic towards the colloquials. This is typical for Christian Arabic literature, for early papyri, and for the language of scientific writing. It may be early colloquial influence, but also Classical Arabic, not yet standardized by grammarians. Wellhausen plausibly suggested that classical Arabic was developed by Christians at Al-Hira. Muslim tradition names among the first persons who wrote Arabic Zayd b. Hamad around 500 AD, and his son, the poet Adi, or was it Adfi? Adi, was it A-D-I? Looks like Adi. Both Christians of Hira. Adi's language was not considered fully Fasih, which may be taken as meaning that classical Arabic was still in course of evolution. So it was still in that period of evolving and developing, possibly. What we know as classical Arabic was academically, and some would say artificially, because of its almost too perfect algebraic looking grammar, root and pattern morphology, standardized between the 3rd Muslim, 9th Christian and 4th Muslim, 10th Christian centuries. Its grammar, syntax, vocabulary and literary usages were clearly defined under systematic and laborious research. We shall return to the issue of the evolution of the classical Arabic later. Arabic words fully exhibit the typical Semitic word structure already mentioned. See above, right? An Arabic word is composed of the root of usually 3 consonants. Is that the trilateral rule? Or the trilateral? Providing the basic lexical meaning of the word, and the pattern which consists of vowels and gives grammatical meaning to the word. This feature has been a positive boon to Muslim commenters who have shown real genius in their inventiveness when confronted with an obscure word in the Koran in need of elucidation. They would often simply turn to the dictionary meaning of the root of an obscure word and try to employ an etymological interpretation of the word. Arabic also makes use of prefixes and suffixes, which act as subject markers, pronouns, and prepositions, and the definite article. Verbs in Arabic are regular in conjugation. There are 2 tenses: the perfect, formed by the addition of suffixes, which is often used by express past time, and the imperfect, formed by the addition of prefixes and sometimes containing suffixes indicating number and gender, which is often used for expressing present or future time. In addition, the 2 tenses there are imperative forms, an active participle and a verbal noun. Verbs are inflected for 3 persons, 3 numbers, singular, dual, plural, and 2 genders. In classical Arabic there is no dual form and no gender differentiation in the first person, and the modern dialects have lost all dual forms. The classical language also has forms for the passive voice. There are 3 cases: nominative, genitive, and accusative. In the declensional system of classical Arabic, nouns are no longer declined in the modern dialects. Pronouns occur both as suffixes and independent words. Okay, it goes on more about the Arabic. Looking at the limitations of Arabic, Shabir Akhtar, who taught for 3 years at the Malaysian Islamic University, contradicts Lewis. In modern analytical philosophy, there is hardly anything in Arabic or any other Islamic tongue. Philosophical discussion is best conducted in English. Owing to the grammatical limitations of Arabic, it is impossible to express most philosophical claims with an acceptable degree of rigor and clarity. Moreover, Arabic is a devotional language lacking the vocabulary requisite for detached discussions of controversial matters. Okay, and go on and on about that. We're going to jump forward. Okay, you see something here about Nabateans. Try to find that again. Saw it here somewhere. About how it may have originated from the Nabatean through the Aramaic, Hebrew and Syriac. Yeah, Nabatean, the immediate forerunner of the Middle Arabic of Islamic cities. It was very widespread indeed.